All righty. Thanks for joining, everyone. It's 2 past the hour. We'll go ahead and get it started. My name is Lewis Housel from MetaKarta, and with me today is Bill Feckrat, who will be doing the demo. So we'll be with you for the next half hour. What we wanted to show you today is a great solution for Snowflake migrations. We call it MetaKarta Dependency Manager for migrations. And what it's going to do, it's going to accelerate and de-risk your migrations from any database or any platform to the Snowflake Data Cloud. So we just have a couple of slides to set the stage, and then we'll be jumping over to a demonstration. If you have any questions, you can ask them in the chat. So we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining. First thing is we want to tell you a little bit about is who is MetaKarta and what is our background, right? So although we may not be a household name, you've probably used us. So we've been providing metadata solutions via OEM to other technology companies for the last 27 years. So we are all of the connectivity inside Informatica products, inside Microsoft Purview. We're all the bridges to not only external projects, but Microsoft products as well. Click Talent resells our full data catalog solution, and we're embedded in Irwin for several decades, and we've had other OEMs with SAP, IBM precisely over the years. So, almost 30 years experience working with metadata with some of the largest data technology companies in the world, which is why we're, very qualified to show you this Snowflake solution next. So really, what problem does this solve? What are we trying to address? Snowflake and their partner community have many, many solutions to help you with the actual data migration. Things like SnowConvert can dramatically speed up code conversion and migrating the data. But a lot of database migrations are delayed not because of the actual move, but really the lengthy decision-making process, because everyone's uncertain, there's no visibility, and they're really scared on what they're going to break. So we're going to show you how we can give you visibility into the complex dependencies. All right, so MetaKarta can really shave 90% off the process of deciding to plan, migrate, doing all the dependency analysis. The number one competition for this is really hiring consultants to go in, manually interview people. That can take a team months. So we're going to be able to speed that up dramatically and de-risk your migration to Snowflake. All right. Some of the capabilities that allow us to do this, and you'll see this in the demo, is our living, breathing architecture diagram. This shows you all the relationships between the database, the ETL processes and code that populate it, the downstream BI tools, whether it's legacy tools like Cognos and Business Objects, or newer tools like Sigma, Tableau, even Excel. And we're also going to show you all of the lineage as well. And since we've been at this for almost 3 decades, we have the most complete library of bridges, over 300 for leading ETL tools, database tools, file systems, BI metadata bridges. We're also very good at creating entity relationships, because a lot of the older systems you may want to migrate to Snowflake don't have a lot of documentation. You know what the relationships are, and you can track all of this and keep all stakeholders on the same page with our dashboard tracker, right? And finally, not the focus of today, but we do have several other solutions for Snowflake customers. We have an external data lineage browser. So directly from inside the Snowflake console, you can click on a table and see the BI dependencies or where it came from in the ETL and the data ecosystem. We also have an entity relationship tool, so you can create ER diagrams directly, from Snowflake databases. And coming soon, we're going to be able to look at your existing BI tools and generate the Snowflake semantic views as well. All right, so pretty excited about that. That's the introduction, so I will go ahead and turn it over to Bill for the demo. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lewis. And what we'll do now is really show you how some of these capabilities play out in the MetaKarta platform. So as Lewis mentioned, right, one of the first things when looking at dependencies for planning, a database migration, right? As Lewis mentioned, right? It's not just the database itself, but it's all the things that, are impacted by that database, right? What are the BI tools and consumers that are, looking at that data? What are the data pipelines that are connected to that? And really being able to uncover those things in the process, right, before you get started, right, helps you ensure, right, that you have, a project that will stay on track, that, is lower risk because you're aware of those dependencies. And you not doing what another customer described to me as a data archaeology project up front, right? Doing that sort of manual, discovery of like what are those dependencies. So this architecture diagram is something that MetaKarta helps build right away, right, on day one. So what we can do, right, is connect to the various sources, right, that, Lewis mentioned. And so when you think about, what are, kind of the key platforms that an organization has, right, we can go all the way to the right and look at, various, BI tools, whether those are, some of the classics, SAP Business Objects, Cognos, right? Some of the more legacy tools that may still be in use in your organization, even if you're using the newer, kind of self-service tools like a Tableau, a Power BI, a Sigma, and so forth, right? Being able to understand like what's in those tools, what dashboards you have, and importantly, like where they're getting their data from, right, is one piece of this. As we travel upstream, right, you can see the other areas that we're able to focus on are, your ETL tools, your ELT tools. Maybe you're using, some, custom SQL scripting or Spark in order to move data from point A to point B, right? These represent your pipelines. And where in those pipelines do you have dependencies on, right, some of those assets that you're thinking about migrating? And then you can even go all the way back to, right, the source, like operational data stores when you think of, right, your legacy, SQL Server, DB2, Oracle databases, and so on, right? Being able to kind of present that full picture together, even back into things like, file stores, whether those are, kind of Amazon or Azure data lakes, or even just kind of, network shares inside, right? Being able to see that whole picture of, what are the data assets that we have? What are the different platforms we have, and how are they connected together, right? And the magic of MetaKarta is that we automatically stitch this together, right? And I'll show you some ways that we do that, right? But it's based on like having that connectivity to those 300 different platforms so that we can get metadata from it, and having, right, our ability to build lineage off of these things automatically, and being able to show it to you at this high level 30,000-foot view of how things are all connected together. So this gives you like initial like insight, right, into your planning before you touch anything, right? You can have a picture like this. It tells you, if I want to move this on-prem data warehouse from SQL Server into Snowflake, what are the things I need to be concerned on, right? What are all the downstream impacts? What's connected to it upstream that might break if I move this? And knowing where to start planning accordingly. Okay, so once you have the picture, then like what next, right? So then what are like the specifics, right? You want to get down to sort of a plan of action. So I can go look at, maybe, for example, try that again, a customer table. Sorry about that. In that data warehouse that we're thinking about migrating. So what MetaKarta will do is start to present you pictures like this. So you can see, right, at different levels, right, what are some of the assets kind of upstream and downstream of this. One thing that's, always going to come up, first question is going to be, what reports am I going to break, right? If I make a change to something, right? The kind of everyone's favorite question about, impact analysis. What reports do I have? Where are they? And which ones are actually tied to this thing that I'm thinking about moving? Well, we answer that for you directly, right? That's such an important question, right? We call that out specifically. So once we've connected and kind of assembled this lineage picture, we want to create a simple, to digest Digest list of all the reports in all the platforms, right, that are connected to this. We also provide the capability that you can jump right from here. So if you actually want to see, right, this business objects report or this Power BI report, you can jump directly to it. So if you want to have, just be able to go from, the MetaKarta platform to that specific object, we create a quick path to go through for there. One thing to call out on this page that not everyone, thinks about, right? We talked about different BI tools, but even Excel, right? When we think about like how dependent people are on Excel is still kind of their sort of shadow BI tool. Right, MetaKarta pays attention to that as well, so we can show you where we've found right different Excel, workbooks that might be like on a shared drive, might be on SharePoint, that are still like consuming data from this source, and we want to be able to point those out to you as well, because that might be something that a financial analyst is using somewhere and is reporting on daily, and they need to know that if a change is made, that's going to impact how they're doing their job. So we provide that list of reports. It's kind of easy to use. We can also go into a more kind of complete end-to-end lineage picture. So now what we're able to do is kind of take that initial architecture diagram and dive down deeper into showing like how individual assets are connected together. So when I come to this page, right, I'm still looking at my customer table in my on-prem warehouse. But as you see, I can look both kind of left and right of this. And maybe I'll even like kind of simplify this a little bit to start, right? Let's just say I want to kind of start from that simple level, right? My red pin here shows me where I am. And I can see, again, just from this customer table, upstream, right, the number of different sources that are feeding into this, downstream, the number of like BI platforms that are consuming from this. And along the way, right, I can drill further in and get like more detail. Another key thing is these arrows, right? Because these arrows contain important information as well. So how is the data getting from my staging to my on-prem warehouse? And here, right, when I click on this, I can see listed is the actual, in this case, an Informatica Power Center mapping that's stitching that together. So if I move this data from my on-prem data warehouse, what's this going to be connected to going forward, right? So now this is a dependency I have to plan for. And now this is how I'm starting to kind of identify like what are going to be those kind of key things to look out for. All right, I can drill deeper down as I go, right? I can expand all to go into, right, this kind of on-prem warehouse. I'll go in and get a very kind of complete view of this customer table. And here again, right, as I go deeper into the platform, I can see the things that are impacted both kind of inside my on-prem warehouse as well as outside. Even all the way down to an individual column level, right? So I can do column level tracing to see exactly, right, how is data moving and where is it going to in each kind of downstream asset. As we go through here, right, the other things that kind of call out are, again, paying attention to the arrows, like how is the data moving and how is it sort of interrelated? So as I go through here, I can also see things like stored procedures, right, that are moving data from, one table to another, even within the data asset itself. These stored procedures might be, open not just to inside the database, but they could be getting called from the BI tools and the ETL tools as well. So again, keeping track of these things helps us know like what are the kind of outside dependencies that the external world needs to be aware of. And as we go through here, right, we'll get down to a level of showing you exactly, table by table, field by field, right, what expressions are involved. So this can get down to understanding, what types of, filters, what types of joins are being applied within here. So we can really uncover at a very kind of step-by-step level, right, how this data is being transformed as it goes. And these are all things, right, to be kind of mindful of as you think about, migrating this data from here. Okay, so we've talked a bit about things at this level. When we think about, right, some of those external forces like, ETL tools and BI tools, it's important to know that we will also kind of show you the details around those as well. Because saying that, a ETL job or a BI report is connected to this data, then the question becomes, well, how, right? Because then if you have to take action on it, what sort of action do you need to take? So here you can see I can pivot over and actually look at, the BI, report, or I can look at, the ETL mapping within here. And again, I'll kind of, expand this out a little bit so you can get a good view. And you can see within here, right, what are, all the source tables, what are all the target tables within here, and what is going on inside of that mapping that I need to be aware of. So I understand exactly, right, how this pipeline is working and how it's connected to, again, my customer table that I'm thinking about moving. So even within here, right, you can see like step by step, like how we kind of unpack what that job is doing, how the data is being kind of selected out of individual sources, and how it's being manipulated along the way. So right, not surprising, this is taking data from a maybe a staging table or a data replication, and it's converting it, it's flattening it out and denormalizing it so that you can see it's taking all this data and combining it together and joining it. And again, when I go step by step, I can see exactly the details of what is this doing. So I can see all the fields that are being kind of touched any step of the way. I can see what individual joins are happening within here. So again, right, for a data engineer who gets asked, okay, what happens if we move this data, right? We can provide you a lot of, kind of insight to help you understand, what if any problems that's going to cause by moving that. So,
Hey, Bill, there was
yes,
one question in the chat if you support MicroStrategy as a BI tool.
yes, we absolutely do. So MicroStrategy is another kind of one of the key BI tools we support, both kind of on-prem as well as for the cloud.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay. All right. So we talked quite a bit about the lineage that we can see within here. Some other things, right, that can be helpful as we, kind of try to give you a better understanding of, how things are all kind of fit together, right? So we talked about the architecture diagram at a high level, providing that high level view. We talked about kind of the step-by-step, end-to-end lineage that we provide. I think another kind of helpful aspect is even being able to just generate relationships and, an entity relationship diagram. Now, if you have, data models that you use, if you have tools like Irwin or ER Studio, as well as a variety of others, right, we can import those in as well to be able to, connect your data models together with what you're doing from a migration standpoint. But sometimes, right, organizations have, either outdated documentation or non-existent documentation. So what do you do in those cases? And this is where MetaKarta can really help you build this blueprint that reverse engineers, right, the metadata and the lineage to build a diagram, similar to this one that shows you how things are related together. Because this might be something that you need to take and look at, especially if you're going to be, going out to data consumers, right? And you need to understand that this is what is expected by, BI reports, by data scientists and data analysts that are working with this data, right? They are expecting these types of relationships to still be in place, once the migration is completed. And so the way we build this, right, is kind of two ways. You can see all the individual tables and their columns listed here, along with data types. We'll look at things like primary and foreign key relationships, right? You can see those called out here. So we'll highlight those and create, the proper sort of, directions, arrows and directions based off of those. But what I also want to point out are some of these dotted lines here. And these are where we've inferred relationships. So the power of MetaKarta is not only saying, okay, your database is telling you, right, that these joins exist, but we can also see, from, the relationships in your BI tools, from the relationships in your ETL and ELT tools? What are some relationships that we can infer? Because this is what we see happening in your data pipelines. And so these ones in yellow are ones that we've discovered, right? Not because the database told us, but because the way you're using the data has informed this. So we'll call those out, right, as inferred relationships. We always show our work within here, right? So when you say, okay, but how do you know that those things are related? Over here in this list, we'll show you those relationships and basically our source of information. And in this case, it's saying, there was a runtime job from ETL that we saw. It's this one specifically. We've seen this one before. And because, right, we unpacked what's happening within there, that's where we discovered that relationship. So we'll present those to you. You have an option here, right, implemented where you can check, basically, accept or ignore, right, those relationships that we suggest. So, right, we're not forcing anything, on you. What we're trying to do is just give you additional insight here and making it easy for you to understand, but also, right, making it trustworthy. So, like, how did you figure that out, MetaKarta? Where did you get that information from? So another asset that we provide for you automatically through kind of our reverse engineering of your metadata and your lineage.
There's a question, Bill. Do you have to have an existing ER tool, or does this generate one?
You trailed off, Lewis. An existing
ER tool. Do you have to already have one, or can
No,
you?
you don't. Yeah, great question. No, you don't. If you don't have one, then what MetaKarta will do is generate these diagrams for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay. So then you may say, all right, we want to, we've kind of looked at this. We've looked at this at the lens of, a couple of tables, a couple of, reports, a couple of ETL tools, right? How do we kind of keep track of this all at, a higher level? So another capability that we have is, right, easy kind of no-code dashboards that you can create over all of this metadata that you have. So, a simple one might be a migration tracker that you can create where you say, I want to keep track of, right, all of these ETL mappings that I've found, all of the different BI reports that I've found within here, and just have a simple dashboard that I can work with. Because as you're doing this discovery, right, presumably, right, you're building a plan for your migration. So let's give you an easy way to keep track of, what are, the things that I've found in this process that I want to be able to kind of start to manage as I go forward. So within here, right, you can build, kind of worksheets and dashboards that keep track of, all of these things. Each one of these, right, you can dive deeper. So if I wanted to go into, right, my list of power center mappings, what you'll see here is really a configurable worksheet. So besides just telling you kind of like the name and what type of object it is, this is where you can extend this further with, additional columns, right? Those can be, additional metadata that we provide automatically, or it can be, custom fields that you define, right? Maybe you want to define your own kind of migration status field and assign a value to each of these. So when you're ready to get started, then you can just kind of go in, edit the field and say, I'm ready to kind of say this has started, let's put it in progress. So now, right, you have a way of keeping track of, right, what is the metadata that we have and kind of where are we in the process. One other kind of key thing to point out is, while, we're going through this, we do want to kind of mention that, like, MetaKarta can maintain like an ongoing connection to your sources. So, right, we know the world is not static. So what happens if these things change, like while you're in this planning stage? Well, MetaKarta is going to continue to go out to your sources to import metadata, to keep the lineage and these relationships up to date so that, as you're kind of, planning out your project, right, we'll still be aware of changes that are happening in your underlying sources. And so these things can be, kind of dynamically updated. So when, new things get added into your sources, when things change, MetaKarta is staying current with what's happening on the sources themselves. Okay. I think that covers a lot of the main things that I wanted to show, right? We talked about, right, how do we, kind of build you sort of the bird's eye view, the enterprise view of your architecture across your different, data stores, data integration, BI platforms. We talked about, right, how we get down into detailed lineage between those things to show you kind of how individual objects are connected together and what's happening within those connections. We talked about, right, being able to show ER diagrams so you understand like how entities are related and what the relationships are there. And we showed you how you can keep track of it all through these types of, custom dashboards and worksheets. So hopefully that gives you an idea of the way that MetaKarta can support you in any type of, data migration activity by kind of highlighting what some of these dependencies are.
All right. All right. Thank you very much, Bill. I do not see any other questions in the chat. So I wanted to thank everyone for attending. I just want to let you know you can go to www.metakarta.com to learn more information, or you can Google our MetaKarta YouTube website for over 30 videos there as well. For anyone who missed it, we'll be sending out the recording. So we want to thank all the attendees, and thanks a lot, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you, Bill. Take care.
Thank you.